Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Crusader Kings 2 Game of Thrones. This is the Greyjoy tutorial. I am the Golden Joeblivion. And last time we talked about, I think, notifications and factions and other stuff. I think that's what we did. I thought I was going to talk about the council a little bit, and I think I already did. So I think we can move past that. Did we talk about laws? I think we sort of did. I don't remember, actually, if we did or not. If we talked about... Yes, we talked about this, I think. I guess we can talk about the military. That's always important. I mean, when you're playing Game of Thrones, or not just Game of Thrones, Crusader Kings 2, your military is always really important. Even if you got a character where you think you don't want to go specifically down the martial path, because the beautiful thing about Crusader Kings, actually, Crusader Kings 2, vanilla or modded, is that it's a... What would you describe it? It's a game that is so open that you don't have to go down one path. So some strategy military games I don't like because they force you to only do military stuff. So for example, that would be my criticism of, let's say, Total War. I mean, although there is some intrigue related stuff, but it's really not as developed as just the battles and the military stuff. It all revolves around the military stuff. It's also a criticism I would have for Stellaris, ironically, made by the same company that made Crusader Kings 2, is with that particular game, the military stuff is super, super well developed, but the diplomacy, the intrigue, the stewardship, all that stuff is really bare bones. So in that particular game, you're forced to fight. Like, you have to fight, because the AI will always make lots and lots of ships, and they'll always go over their fleet capacity, and they will always look at every opportunity to attack you, even if they're a peaceful species. So, but Crusader Kings 2 doesn't have that problem. Everything here is pretty damn sorted out. It's really, really well done. So you can have a character, and I've done this before. You know, let's say you have one game where you go full martial and you just conquer everything, right? You just conquer everything with armies. If you were to play another game, it would be kind of boring to just do that all over again. So luckily, you don't have to. You can make characters that are like really, really high in diplomacy, and seeing just how much you can take over through just diplomacy. You can win by doing that. You can just do strategic marriages, you can buy people's loyalty, you can convince people to join your cause, even if they really normally wouldn't, because you have such a high diplomacy. Same thing goes for... Well, I mean, you would think the same thing for Stewardship, although I haven't actually... No, you can actually win with Stewardship too. Like, you can have terrible skills and everything, but if your Stewardship's really, really high, you get fuck tons of gold, you can upgrade everything, you can buy all the mercenaries on the planet, and just overwhelm your enemies that way. Intrigue. If you guys have seen my Golden Lion campaign, I really suggest you guys check that out. Particularly the episodes that have King/Lord Paramount Lyman. That was a character who had trash stats in everything except for his intrigue was super, super high. And with a really, really high intrigue, he was actually able to kind of engineer the destruction of King Aegon and his sisters. It was really, really fucking awesome. So that's definitely possible. Learning, I don't know if you can win from just focusing on learning. I'm sure it has some benefits, but I find that learning is best for when you're a child, because then you just you learn more shit as you're developing. When you're older, a high learning doesn't really matter, except for maybe certain scenarios or little specific events. But military, these are your army levies. Now, so what this means is essentially, from Demean, these are your personal levies, all right? These are considered your personal troops. So when you raise them, you'll be paying for them. But the flip side is your vassals won't get pissed, so these are your personal troops. These are the troops that your vassals own that they have to give you because you are their liege lord. That's the agreement. You protect them, and they promise you gold and troops. So when you raise your personal troops, you're paying for them. When you raise your vassals' troops, they pay for that. The trade-off is that certain vassals, depending on your religion and your culture, won't like it when you raise their levies for a very, very long time. So if you're, let's say, if you're part of the Westerlands and you're a Westerlander and you're of the Faith of the Seven, your vassals aren't going to like their armies being raised for extended periods of time, and they'll complain and they'll say, look, this is expensive. Could you give us tax concessions or pay us or something? Don't have to worry about that with your own troops, but it will take it out of your own treasury. Now, the Ironborn are a little bit different because they are a very warlike culture. And when you raise the levies of your vassals don't care. In fact, it's the inverse. If you don't use your levies and your vassals' promised troops for raiding or war, they actually you actually take a prestige hit. Your vassals think less of you. So that's something that you want to pay attention to, depending on what your culture and your religion is. In Westeros, it's really only the Ironborn and the Wildlings that have that particular trait. But if you experiment with the custom game setup, you'll find that it's the same thing for pirates down here in the Stepstones. It's the same thing for corsairs down here in the Basilisk Isles. It's probably the same thing for the Dothraki, although I've never played the Dothraki before. And I'm sure there are some other unique cultures and shit that have the same sort of mechanics. If we go back to the military tab, okay, so what this does is it shows you all your vassals, and it shows you, it says total strength. I'm not really sure how to read that. It does break down kind of what, like how many troops your vassals are promising you. So if we look at Harl Goodbrother, it shows his opinion. Let's see, for every 61 days that a vassal levy is raised during an offensive non-crusade war, the vassal will get a -1 opinion of you. Okay, that's great. So this is why diplomacy can be super fucking important, and why you can actually win with a really high diplomacy, and that's based off of the opinion of your vassals. That also determines how many troops that they offer you. So, I mean, if you have an astoundingly high diplomacy, you're going to have vassals who will commit just huge amounts of troops to you. And the inverse is also true. If your vassals hate you, they might not promise you any soldiers, and then all of a sudden your armies are shit. So that's what this kind of shows here. Lord Reaver Harl owns 5,000 troops in total. It breaks down what kind of troops they are, which is nice. It's nice, but it's not a very necessary detail unless you want to metagame really hard. Let's see. Lord Reaver Harl could provide at most 8,000 troops. Of this, you are able to raise 35% due to opinion and the laws. Oh, very nice. And so, if you want to see who your vassals are, if they like you, how many troops they're willing to offer you, and shit like that. And if you can maximize this, if you can maximize your vassals' opinions of you, your armies can become massive, and that can make all the difference. Like, if Dalton Greyjoy really, if we started really pumping him with diplomacy, we could get this number up probably to 20,000. Maybe even higher than that. When you're a faction like the West, the Westerlands, or the Trident, or the Vale, or the North, or the Reach, and you have a high diplomacy, these numbers can get ridiculous. Just how many soldiers you can field in battle. Going over to the next tab here, we got Mercenaries. Mercenaries are... If you know what a mercenary is, it works the same way. You hire, they fight for you for gold, and it says how much they cost per month, what the cost is up front, how many troops they offer you, what kind of troops they are. This is why whenever I play, well, really any Crusader Kings 2 game or mod, I always make sure I try to max out my treasury to about 1,000 gold. And then anything above 1,000 gold I can spend on whatever I feel like we need to spend it on. And the reason I do that is it provides a fantastic financial buffer. So what that means is that if we ever get invaded by a neighbor who is many times stronger than we are, if we have a treasury of a solid 1,000 gold, that means we can hire out maybe 2-3 mercenary groups, and sometimes that's enough to equal out the numbers. So, whereas our vassals and our own demesne wouldn't be able to raise the troops necessary to combat a stronger opponent, our treasury can hire enough mercenaries to where we can match them in numbers. So that's really, 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 really big. It's also really, really big in case you're having lots of instability in the realm. So if you've got a lot of factions here who are trying to depose you and shit, and let's say the vast majority of your vassals join the faction to depose you, and then they give you an ultimatum, and in case, you know, you don't have an heir, or the heir is not of your dynasty or some shit, and you lose, and giving into that ultimatum would make you become landless, that's a game over. You lose if you become landless. Having a treasury of 1,000 gold, however, you can buy mercenaries who will fight for you and could potentially win the civil war for you. So that's where mercenaries come in, and they're really, really useful. You can also, certain characters you can actually get, like, you can actually command them to assemble their own mercenary band, and then it becomes associated with you. Like, you get paid a percentage of the amount of gold that mercenary band makes, and, you know, you have to fund them, you have to give them soldiers, you have to give them equipment, you can upgrade shit. It gets really, really detailed, and I haven't messed around with that feature too much, but I have a little bit. So, I mean, it is kind of cool, and if that interests you, I highly suggest checking that out. Holy Orders are something I don't really make use of a lot. I imagine Holy Orders is something that's really, really useful in vanilla CK2. In all honesty, I've only played vanilla CK2 one time, and I thought it was boring, and I never played it again, so I only play modded CK2. But I imagine in Holy Orders, you know, you've got, you know, when you're doing crusades and things like that, you can get specialized groups of soldiers who will fight for you, I think for a cost, but they might be maintenance free. I'm not entirely sure. But that's where they would be located. And I think I've seen them before in my Elder Kings campaign, but I didn't really make use of them. And then on this tab, we've got our fleets. Fleets are really, really important, especially for the Iron Isles, because we need boats to get, well, really everywhere. As you can see, the islands here really are islands. There is no connection to the mainland. You could tell if there's a crossing because of these little dotted lines here. If you see this shit, that means you can move from here to here. If you don't see that, that means it's cut off from the mainland and you need boats. For example, if we go over here to Skagos, it's an island off the coast of the north that used to be ruled by the Skagosi. They're just like seafaring raiders and stuff. Well, unfortunately, they're not a true island because, you know, you can cross through the southern Bay of Seals, which is kind of shitty for them. It's the same thing for Bear Island. It's not really an island because you can just, you know, your armies can literally walk across the water, although it's supposed to be a straight crossing or something. Is that everything for this? And then there are retinues, disabled for this mod. I don't know what retinues do, in all honesty. If anybody in the comment section knows what retinues do, please feel free to share that knowledge that you have about that. Going on to Intrigue, possibly one of my favorite aspects of Crusader Kings 2 is the Intrigue tab. This is where all the sneaky shit is going on. That's why you see the little guy with the dagger and someone sleeping in their bed. This is where you want to go if you want to remove somebody, remove a character who is being particularly troublesome, and it gives you a bunch of options of how you want to do that. This is the My Plots tab, so anytime you can start a plot, though beware if your intrigue is low or your spy master is not trustworthy. Or it just means that you'll get caught, or, well, yeah, pretty much the plot will fail or you'll get caught, and both of those are bad. Right, so, I mean, how do I test this out? Let's see. I'm not actually going to do anything, but let's say I wanted to remove Azia. So I can see here, when you, what is that button? When you right-click a character, it brings up a bunch of different options of how you want to interact with them. Left-clicking them opens them up here so you can look at their traits and their stats and shit, their religion, their culture, what they're doing, which is also really important, their little dual skill here. Apparently she's a child because she's 15, and she really, really dislikes us. Abductor, set aside. Oh, so she's pissed off that we kidnapped her, and then we just kind of like, we're like, all right, well, we don't want you anymore. Right. All right, so if I right-click, I can see all this shit I can do, and some stuff that I can do that I haven't met the conditions for. Send gift, I can imprison them, I can arrange a marriage, arrange a betrothal, assign a guardian, I can plot to kill them, and I can plot to kidnap them. I mean, I can go through all this stuff in detail later on in another episode, or maybe later in this episode, but right now we're focusing on Intrigue. So you can see I can plot to kill, and I can plot to kidnap. Lord Dalton has decided it's time for Azia to depart this world. Lord Paramount Dalton wants to see Azia of the Iron Isles brought in chains before him. Right, so they work pretty much as you intend. So let's say I wanted to kill her. Right? So we're going to do that. If I go to my plots, here I can see kill Azia. There's the target, backers, plot power. This is how much plot power I have on my own. You can also auto-invite plotters, which I tend to do. I tend to do that. Success condition is dead. Okay, I like that. That's a straightforward objective. We want to see her dead. And we can also cancel the plot for whatever reason. And trust me, when you play this game enough, you will find that there are going to be times where you want to cancel this shit. For example, when you're trying to assassinate your liege lord, who is the king of the Iron Throne, and they find out, or they're about to find out, so you want to cancel that shit. Invite potentially useful characters to your plot. Yes, this will be useful. And all the thumbs up essentially means, yeah, that they're going to help, Let's see. So when you look at these little options here, it tells you initial plot power, that's how much plot power you have on your own, and then it tells you possible plot power, 132%, and that pretty much means everyone who's willing to join you and people who might join you, but they need a little bit of an incentive, and generally that incentive is gold. You pay some people gold, they'll join your plot, they'll help you kill whoever you want or kidnap whoever you want. There was something else I was going to say, but I've totally forgotten. Right, well, that's how my plots work. We're going to cancel that because I actually don't want to kill her. Gnome plots. These are plots that are discovered by your spy master. That's why your spy master is super important. And that's why I often have my spy masters scheme. I have them scheme in the capital because that tends to be where all this, like the plots and shit tend to congregate towards the capital. Because that's where all the good shit's, that's where all the important shit is happening. So you can see here, you make a spy master scheme, there is a 35.61% chance of uncovering a plot, and that's because he has an intrigue of 15. Discovering plots, those plots go right here, and you can see what is happening. I like to auto-check, auto-stop plots, especially if my character is really unpopular, because the moment that a plot comes up where people start considering killing my character, I want them to automatically be told, hey, you need to stop that shit. And it tends to work. Sometimes it doesn't. And if it doesn't work and you demand that they stop a plot, you can arrest them. I think that's about it. It also kind of tells you what's going on in the realm based off of the plots. And you don't always have to auto-stop plots. For example, Dalton Greyjoy, he's so well-liked, I don't think he actually needs to stop plots. But we're just going to keep that checked for right now. If you have any prisoners, either you've taken them through war, conquest, or if you've kidnapped them, they're going to be here, and it's the same thing. You can right-click them, and you can interact with them and do a bunch of different stuff. We don't have any prisoners there right now, but I'm sure we will get some in the future. Threats are a little more, faction leader, faction members. Okay. Threats, how do I explain what threats are? Threats are obviously threats to your rule, but I'm not sure really how it's calculated because Drennan and Ralph are both part of the Liege Loyalist faction, and as you guys know, a Liege Loyalist faction is good. Like, they want your character to rule. I used to think of threats as being vassals who are potentially a threat. So vassals who are really, really powerful and may or may not like you. But it seems here that the quote threats in this case are people who are loyal to us, so I'm not really sure what it means by threats. The next tab is, have I talked about this tab? I think I have. I think the second episode we talked about this tab and how fucking important it is. And then you have the religion tab. This tab I don't mess around with often because I think in Game of Thrones it doesn't really matter. For moral authority, If you want to play a little fun mini game, you can decide, all right, for my particular religion, I'm going to get the moral authority up to 100%, and that generally requires controlling a bunch of holy sites. So we can see here, moral authority of the drowned god is 32.5%. It's an organized religion, so that's 20% right there. Holy site of Harrenhal needs to be controlled, and right now it's not controlled by an Ironborn. It's controlled by Lord Harris of Harrenhal, and he is a Faith of the Seven. And Harrenhal, if you guys remember from the lore, was built by, well, shit, I actually don't remember the Iron King who started construction of it, but I do know that the castle was supposed to be completed by Iron King Harren the Black. And so it's a territory, it's a castle that was built predominantly by the Ironborn, and now it's controlled by non-Ironborn, so that's why it's considered a holy site. There is also, let's see, Seagrave, Seastone Hill, Lonely Light, and Storm's End. I'm not sure why Storm's End is considered a holy site. Maybe it has something to do with the Drowned God trying to fight the Storm God, but, you know, or maybe the mod makers were just like, hey, we need 5 spots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5 spots. So you control the holy sites, and the moral authority of the Drowned God goes up. And I used to think it didn't do anything because when you looked under modifier, it doesn't display anything. So it's like, well, it must not do anything. Although I have had conversations with people in other of my videos on YouTube where they have described to me that the modifiers do exist and things do happen when your moral authority is high, but I have never accomplished that. Maybe that'll become a little mini-series in and of itself, but for right now, this is what the religion tab does. Under societies, in the older versions of Game of Thrones, this tab was actually empty, but now there's these Alchemist Guild. List all members, list all known societies, conditions. Okay, so there's only one society, and that's the Alchemist Guild. Let's see, one of these must be true. Mystic, Scholar, Fire Obsessed, Lunatic, Erudite. Oh, okay, so you just need one of these sort of rare traits. You know, actually, Scholar and Mystic wouldn't be that hard to get. You just have to go down the theology or learning focus. The Guild of Alchemists is an old order of pyromancers. The guild was once powerful, though in the recent centuries the maesters rose in prominence, and the pyromancers saw their influence dwindle. The pyromancers still claim to possess vast secret stores of knowledge, and they have society influence. Members' learning is plus 15%. Interesting. Patron can use stalks of wildfire as a weapon. Okay, so King's Landing definitely has this option. I'm not sure how good it is. I haven't actually had the option to use it in a siege. Power, donate to the guild. Support the Alchemists Guild by way of a generous donation in return for wisdom. Hire an alchemist. Send for a trained pyromancer from the Guild of Alchemists to join you. Make wildfire. Ooh, cool. Acolyte has discount on lower rank decisions. Can travel to learn from a wisdom. Power, create fake valuables. Use your knowledge of alchemy to create fake valuables. That's kind of cool. Wisdom, can study the knowledge stores, can obtain rare powers. Ooh, rare powers. Grand Master can use a rare elixir. This is so fucking cool. I want to do this now. I want to join the Alchemist Guild. So maybe it would be worthwhile to have a character high in learning, because then you can join the Alchemist Guild and get crazy new shit. That's it. I'm going to make a series for this. You guys tell me a good character to do that with, because I don't know of a good character. Maybe the Lord of Old Town or something. I don't know. So that is the Societies tab, and I think that is all the tabs up here. Okay, so that's cool. We've covered all the tabs up here at the top, I believe, and there's the character tab as well, which maybe in the next episode we will go into more detail for that. But I think that's going to wrap up this episode. If you found this, if you enjoyed this episode, or if you found it useful, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe as always. This has been Crusader Kings 2, the Greyjoy tutorial. I have been the Golden Joeblivion, and until next time, I will see you all later.